A 180-pound Viking warrior walks into a modern gym. Someone points him toward the biggest guy in the building, 280 pounds, bench presses 405, squats 600, a walking monument to everything modern training has figured out about building muscle. They're going to settle it two ways. First, arm wrestling, then rowing a boat for as long as they can. You'd bet everything on the bodybuilder for the arm wrestle. Bigger muscles, more training, scientifically optimized strength. The Viking wins in 8 seconds. The bodybuilder's grip gives out before the Viking even looks uncomfortable. In the rowing, the bodybuilder taps out in under an hour. The Viking is still pulling at hour 10, not struggling, just working. Like it's a Tuesday. Now here's the question that should bother you. How does a man with 100 pounds less muscle win both of those? The answer isn't about Vikings specifically. It's about a type of strength we've quietly abandoned in modern training. A type that made smaller men more physically capable than people twice their size. And once you understand what it is, you'll never look at a gym workout the same way again. Let's start with the physical evidence, because it's genuinely strange. When researchers analyzed Viking skeletal remains, they found stress markers in the shoulders, backs, and forearms that didn't match the body weight of the skeletons. The muscle attachment points, the places where tendons anchor to bone, were so heavily developed that they looked like they belonged to men significantly larger than the bones suggested. Professor Neil Price from Uppsala University, one of the leading authorities on Viking Age Scandinavia, noted that the physical evidence painted a picture of men who had been under sustained, heavy physical load for essentially their entire lives. Not periodic load, the kind you apply in training sessions and then recover from. Constant, daily, unrelenting load. That distinction is everything. And it points to something modern exercise science is only recently starting to quantify properly. The difference between training your body and using your body, between optimizing for output in controlled conditions and conditioning yourself to function under any conditions indefinitely. Here's the thing about Vikings. They didn't train, not in any sense we'd recognize. They worked every single day from childhood for survival. A Viking oarsman on a longship raid wasn't doing a 45-minute cardio session. He was rowing for 12 to 16 hours. Not because it was on his program, because the ship needed to move and his life depended on it moving fast enough. Viking fishermen hauled nets weighing hundreds of pounds, not in a single clean set with chalk and a rest period, but repeatedly for hours in cold water on an unstable boat with wet ropes, farming with hand tools, carrying timber for construction, wrestling as both sport and genuine combat preparation, and occasionally real combat, where your strength didn't earn you a trophy. It determined whether you went home. The load was constant. The variety was total. The stakes were real, and that combination did something to the human body that progressive overload in a controlled gym environment simply does not replicate. This is where it gets genuinely interesting, and where modern exercise science starts to catch up with what Vikings discovered by accident. When a bodybuilder trains, they're sending a very specific signal to their nervous system. Move maximum weight for a small number of repetitions. Then rest. Then repeat in a week. The nervous system adapts to exactly that demand. It becomes extraordinarily good at producing maximum force in specific movement patterns, in fresh conditions, over short durations. That adaptation is real and impressive. But it's narrow. When a Viking worked, the signal was completely different. The message to the nervous system was, produce useful force continuously, under fatigue, in unpredictable patterns, with no rest coming, ever. And the body adapts to that signal too. But the adaptation looks completely different. Grip strength. Occupational research on dock workers, fishermen, and manual laborers consistently shows grip strength 40 to 60% higher than gym-trained individuals at similar body weights. Not because they do more grip training, but because they're under varied grip demands constantly for years. Vikings who spent decades on rope work, oar handles, and weapon use would have developed hand and forearm strength that would embarrass modern athletes who can't figure out why their deadlift is limited by their grip. Mitochondrial density. Sustained work under load builds the cellular machinery for endurance at a structural level more mitochondria per muscle fiber, denser capillary networks, superior lactate clearance. Set-based training with rest periods never creates these adaptations at the same depth because the rest periods prevent the sustained demand that triggers them. Work capacity. This is the category where the separation becomes most dramatic. A bodybuilder might squat 600 pounds for 1 rep, a Viking might squat 350. But after rowing for 8 hours, and again the next day, and the day after that, those are not comparable forms of strength. They're different tools built for different environments. Here's where most comparisons between ancient warriors and modern athletes go wrong. They ask who was stronger, and that question has an easy answer. The modern bodybuilder, in any single maximum effort lift. Not close. Decades of refined progressive overload, nutritional science, and recovery optimization produce a level of peak force output that no ancient warrior could match. But peak force output in controlled conditions is not the same thing as useful strength. It's like asking whether a Formula One car or a military truck is faster. The answer is completely dependent on the terrain. On a prepared track, the Formula One car wins by a margin that isn't worth measuring. In a field, on a dirt road, carrying supplies in the rain, it's not even a contest. Put a bodybuilder on a longship that needs to cross open water. His grip fails in the first hour. His shoulders are exhausted by hour 2. By hour 3, he physically cannot continue. The Viking is warming up. Ask them both to haul fishing nets all morning. Build a shelter in the afternoon, and be ready to defend it in the evening. The bodybuilder is done after the nets, possibly before. The 280-pound man, with every advantage modern training can offer, would not survive a week in Viking-age Scandinavia. His strength simply wouldn't translate to the demands of that environment. The uncomfortable truth, and this is worth sitting with, is that modern training made a trade. We traded functional capacity for measurable output. We traded work endurance for peak performance. We built systems that are extraordinarily good at producing strength in specific, controlled conditions. And in doing so, we quietly let go of the kind of strength that kept humans alive and capable for most of our existence. This isn't an argument against modern training. The bodybuilder's strength is real. The science behind hypertrophy and progressive overload is sound. For specific goals, aesthetics, powerlifting competition, sport-specific performance, modern methods are unambiguously superior to anything a Viking ever had access to. But most people training in gyms today aren't preparing for powerlifting competitions. They want to be strong, capable, physically useful in the actual conditions of their lives. And for that goal, the Viking approach, strength built through use, not just through training, has something important to say. You don't need to row a long ship, but you can train with the same underlying principle. Carry things. Not in sets, just carry them until you can't anymore, then push a little further. Grip work that goes beyond chalk and straps, ropes, thick bars, sustained holds, movements performed under fatigue, not just when fresh. Work capacity training that teaches your body to produce strength continuously, not just in bursts between rest periods. Farmers' carries, sled pushes, rope work, loaded hiking, wrestling or martial arts, manual labor if you can find it. These aren't alternatives to strength training. They're the missing layer beneath it, the foundation that makes every other form of strength actually useful when the conditions stop being controlled. The Vikings didn't know they were optimizing anything. They were just surviving. But in surviving, they built bodies that could sustain output under real load for hours and days in a way that our most sophisticated training systems still haven't fully replicated. Strength is specific. You get what you train for. The question is whether what you're training for is actually what you need. If this changed how you think about what strength actually means, subscribe, because every week we dig into the physical cultures that built history's most capable bodies and what modern training can actually learn from them. Drop a comment. After a hard day of physical work, are you gassed out or still going? Your answer tells you more about your real fitness than any number on a barbell. See you in the next one.